There we go. That's it. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Okay, welcome to Happiness in Uncertain Times with multi-award-winning CEO Julian Pace from Happiness Co. And while we're just waiting, we'll give people a couple of minutes to enter. Just take time to test your camera, etc., and sound if you can. We'll keep you on mute if we can do that. Just keeps things a bit quieter so we can hear the presenter. If you do want to take off your camera or mic, you can do so by clicking on the mute, by clicking the mute down the bottom, or stop video on the bottom left of your Zoom. Also, if you wish to post questions, you're very welcome to in the Q&A session that we'll have afterwards, hopefully, if we have time, and you can do so by putting it into the chat window. Okay. Just want to do acknowledgement of country, if I may, please. Wherever you all may be, we would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. It's a bit of a general one. Okay, thank you, Julian. I'll leave it for you to kick it off. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me, firstly. I appreciate you all making time for this presentation this morning. And obviously today I get to talk to you all about happiness and uncertainty and I guess what that means for your life, your relationships, your friendship circles and also your career. And happiness is universal, but so is the challenge of fear, uncertainty, worry, doubt. And when I say universal, every single person on the planet goes through difficult moments in their life. And Happiness Co works in the preemptive space. So we work in the everyday tools to overcome our challenges. And what does that mean? Well, no one in the morning wakes up and says, I want to go through my daily, dose of heartbreak today, or I don't want to, feel struggles and hardship. But unfortunately, so many people in life go through difficult times. They do go through heartbreak. They do go through challenges. So it's about building the tools that we call being resourceful to overcome it. So Happiness Co has been going for about 3 years now, and I've been doing this work for about 7. I work in the space of what we call human behavior. And if you think about mental health being a traffic light system, red, orange, and green, red being real crisis management, orange being, resilience, and then green being the everyday tools to a happier life. Happiness Co works across all angles of that, but where I spend most of my time is the red. So the red looks a lot like this: rape, suicide, sexual assault, physical abuse, and substance abuse. So I spend most of my time traveling Australia, talking to organizations and people about how they ultimately heal their life or overcome the challenges that they have faced in their lives to ensure they can find happiness and fulfillment in their life. And what I call moments of impact. So you can have a little moment of impact or a large moment of impact. And regardless of the size of the impact, it either brings you incredible pleasure or it brings you incredible amounts of pain. So if you think about your own life and your journey of your life this far, you have moments in your life that brought you incredible memories of joy, happiness, and love, but you've also had some things in your life that have brought you pain and suffering and sadness. And the reason I do this work, and I always like to give context of the reason I do the work, is because I lost my father to suicide when I was 21. And my father and I had an argument a few days before he took his own life, and I said some horrible things that I didn't mean. And I was really angry at the particular time when I said these things, and we were having some conflict. And why I share that is because that was the moment of impact in my life when I started making choices away from the young man I wanted to be. And every single person right now on this call either makes choices towards the person they want to be, the dad they want to be, the mum they want to be, the partner they want to be, or they make choices away from the person, the partner, the mum, the dad that they want to be. And it's very simple. Life is always about decision-making. Meaning, emotion, and decision-making. So the meanings that we apply. So think about this, for instance. If you get a bill in the mail, Well, the meaning that you apply to that bill determines how you feel about it. So if the meaning is, oh my God, it always happens to me, I'm always getting these bills, it's so unfair that I keep getting charged these late fees, then the feelings that you have attached to that bill will be probably frustration, sadness, worry. And what we know about human psychology and human behavior is what you think about, you become. And what you focus on expands. It's part of the brain. So it's called RAS. If you ever get a chance to check out RAS, it's a really powerful part of the brain which ultimately searches for what you're looking for. I'm just going to turn my emails off. Robbie did warn me about that. He goes, mate, can you turn all your notifications off? Because I just beep all day long. But RAS is the part of the brain that searches for what you're looking for. Another one going off. Hold on. Think about, have you ever been on bookings.com before and then gone onto Facebook and then seen bookings.com trying to sell you accommodation? Because what does bookings.com know? It knows you're looking for a holiday. It knows that you're looking for these things. And the part of the brain that's your RAS, it activates the things in your life that you're aware of or you're looking for. So if you're looking for all the bad in the world, you'll find it. If you're looking for all the bad in people, you'll find it. If you're looking for all the bad in people in your workplace, you'll find it. But if on the flip side of that, if you're looking for the good in the world, you'll find that. If you're looking for the good in people also. But when I mentioned moments of impact, every single person on the planet has a story about their life. And depending the story that you have and the role that you play in your story determines the quality of your life. And what I mean by that is this. You can have a disempowering life, like some challenges in your life and bad things have happened to you, but you can play an empowering role and still overcome your challenges. But if you have a disempowering story and you play a disempowering character, then you have a very, very difficult life because how you show up matters and the decisions that you make matter. And what I mean by that is, after I lost my father along the way to suicide, my story was that he wasn't here anymore and it was my fault. And because of that, the character I played became what I call a character of a monster. I became a victim, I blamed, I justified, I complained about my life. And because of that, I made a lot of choices away from the young man I wanted to be. And I share that with you is because emotions matter. How you feel determines how you think, and how you think determines the actions that you take. And I've learned this in my life. I'm now 33 and I've got a stepson. I've got my first child on the way, and I've also got 9 employees across Australia that work for Happiness Co. And what I've learned is there's 2 things that you can't take back in this world: the words that come out your mouth and the things that you do. So we as people need to get better at the things that come out our mouth, and we also have to get better at the things that we do, because who's responsible for that? 100% ourselves. And where we work, I work with the Australian cricket team. We work with the Eagles. We do some work with the Freo Dockers. We've done some work with the Bombers. I do some work with David Reynolds, the supercar driver. And where we spend most of our time is what we call peak performance and personal performance. So if you think about peak performance being achievement, so all the things in your life that you're trying to achieve, or you have achieved, that could be housing, that could be cars, that could be assets, that could be shares, that could be companies, that could be promotions, that could be the amount of money you get paid, that could be getting married, that could be having kids. These things are all linked to achievement. And achievements are very important in our life to feel that we're waking up with a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. But have you ever met someone before in your life that has a lot of money that's quite unhappy? I'm sure you have. Have you ever met someone before that wanted that job so very much but now spends no time with their family? Have you met that person that seems to have their life all sorted out but is completely lonely? And the reason I share this is because it's quite common. And we call it the happiness trap. There's people that quite often determine their worthiness by the things that they achieve. I repeat it. There's quite often people that determine their worthiness by what they achieve, and what you achieve doesn't necessarily reflect who you are. So what I mean by that is the last person that you say goodnight to before you go to bed at night is yourself. And the first person that you wake up in the morning to and say good morning to is yourself. And the quality of your life always reflects the quality of the relationships that you have. But most importantly, starting with the relationship you have for yourself. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you neglect your finances, you'll probably have some challenges financially or maybe go broke. If you neglect your health, You either get sick or become really unwell. If you neglect your relationships with your intimate partner or your friendship circles, you probably won't have thriving relationships. If you neglect your career, you probably won't have a career full of passion and purpose for what you do. But if you neglect yourself, everything that you seem to care about starts to fall away. Because if you think about the whole airplane analogy, if there's a challenge on an airplane, you've got to fit your own oxygen mask first before you help others. And we all fall into the trap of oftentimes when things aren't going so well for us, trying to help other people rather than making sure we're looking after ourselves, which turns into what I call personal performance. Well, personal performance is how you feel about yourself. Are you proud of yourself? Do you like yourself? Are you a good dad? Are you a good mum? Are you a good work colleague? Are you proud of the person you are? Which leads to this question. Living the way you want to be remembered. And why that question is important, because we link it to authenticity. So there is a key factor about human behavior when we believe that we're being authentic and how much happiness that brings us. So when we're being authentic, we're being real, we're standing for our values, we're living from our belief systems, and we're being the person that we want to be. That brings a lot of fulfillment to our lives, which is personal performance. But quite often people struggle to be authentic because we get so caught up in what I call the universal fears. And if you have kids or you have grandkids or you think about your own life, what I call universal fears, well, these are the universal fears. Number one, the fear of not being good enough. And we've all been there before. Number two, the fear of not being loved. And number three, the fear of being rejected. Rejection is difficult at the best of times. The fear of not being loved is challenging at the best of times. And the fear of not being good enough for your friends, your colleagues, your peers is also quite difficult. And why these matter, as I mentioned before, it's emotion, story, and then behavior. So think, I feel unworthy. My story is no one in my workplace likes me. I wonder what kind of choices that you make. If you think emotionally that I feel unloved, I don't know if my partner is no longer in love with me anymore, it's the story that you tell yourself. I wonder what kind of choices that you make. So the best way to think about a story, and stories matter. So Happiness Co is a story-based company, which is stories matter. The stories that you tell yourselves matter. And they quite often don't make sense. So I'm going to unmute Rob, if that's okay. Rob? Hello, Rob.
Hi, mate.
Have you ever heard of a conspiracy theory before?
Oh, all the time. 5G. What a conspiracy theory.
5G, yep, 5G, 9/11, the coronavirus. There's that many conspiracy theories out there at the moment. But what is one thing, or quite often a few things, that conspiracy theories lack?
Oh, the truth.
The truth. Thank you so much, Rob. I appreciate you playing full out with me. And the reason why I use Rob as an example, but think about what Rob just said. The thing about conspiracy theories are they quite often lack facts or the truth. Think about people. We are also very good at telling ourselves stories that don't always have facts, don't always have the truth, which is people in my workplace don't like me. And I'm like, well, how do you know people in your workplace don't like you? Have you spoken to anyone? I can just tell because the way Rob looks at me. And we start to make up stories that are conspiracy theories that don't serve our happiness. And we're very, very good at doing it. And quite often when there's uncertainty, and think uncertainty in your life, when there's uncertainty of things that aren't the same or are different, we as our human behavior is to fill the gap with something that quite often is disempowering or quite often negative. Because every single day of your life, this is the really cool part about the human brain, if you use it properly, every single day of your life, you have about 60,000 thoughts. So think about how many of these thoughts go into things that are causing you frustration, pain, worry, doubt. 60,000 thoughts a day. And then out of these 60,000 thoughts, you make about 30,000 decisions. But the thing is that most people make their decisions on what we call autopilot. And most of our thoughts are on autopilot. So we are creatures of habit. We all know that. We love ease. We love simplicity. The mind loves things to be easy. So when you think about the 60,000 thoughts that you have a day and the 30,000 decisions that you make, your choices are quite often on autopilot. You don't really think about putting your shoes on in the morning. You don't really consciously think about brushing your teeth. You don't jump out of bed in the morning, jump start your heart and your lungs. That all happens for you. A lot of the things that we do in our lives are what we call unconscious. But if you think about the challenge that comes with that, think about the period of your life, and I'm going to unmute Julia, or Julie, if that's okay. Hello, Julie.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Julie, if you could help me out here, what is the period of time called in someone's life when they meet another person, like when you start dating them? What is that period of time called?
I don't know. The courtship?
The courtship? No, it's called the honeymoon.
The honeymoon.
The honeymoon period. So
Okay.
if we've all heard the expression before, the honeymoon period, thanks, Julie, sorry. If we think about the honeymoon period as a whole, the concept, by the way, it is that the relationship's at its best in its honeymoon period because both parties are putting time and attention into each other. They're making the other person feel special. You're going on dates. You're giving each other time and attention. You're making the other person feel appreciated. That is what the honeymoon period looks like. But why is it, though, that often in relationships, so divorce is more common, over 50% in Australia right now, divorce is more common than not common now. Why is it that the honeymoon period falls away? Is it because we're busier than we've ever been or our priorities change? If you're being honest with yourself, it's because our priorities change. Because once upon a time you made time to go out and date night. Once upon a time you made the time to text that person all day long or call that person all day long. And the reason I use that example is there's a fundamental flaw in the human DNA. And we know this, and you will see it, is that we don't appreciate what we have, doesn't matter how good it is. So quite often when we get something, we get a brand new iPhone and we're so stoked because we've got a brand new shiny object. Or we get a brand new car or we get a new job and we are so happy in that particular moment. But then after a while, it's just the phone, it's just the car, and a bit of tongue in cheek here, sometimes it comes just a relationship. But think about your choices. So you get home from work and you've had a really stressful week. It's a Friday afternoon and you open the fridge and there's a bowl of beer or a bowl of wine and a bowl of water. What quite often do you go with? I saw someone lip read water. But we quite often go with the beer and we go with the wine, correct? And the reason why I mention this is because happiness comes from the little things, the little choices, how we treat ourselves, how we treat others, and the choices that we make that lead us towards the person that we want to be. And what's very important about this is that you can't respect something that you don't value. And you can't value something that you don't respect. So if you think about your own happiness, you have to respect who you are in the process. You've got to respect the things that you've gone through. You've got to respect your decisions. And what you realize in life is that you're more than your problems and you're bigger than your mistakes. So we work a lot in suicide prevention. And there's a lot of people that hold on to their past. There's a lot of people that hold on to the challenges and the mistakes they've made along the way. Well, I've made a lot of mistakes in my life and I've hurt a lot of good people. And that was after I lost my father. I definitely lost my way. But I share that with you again because you're not what happens to you, you're who you decide to become. You're not a coronavirus. You're not the circumstances that you're in. You're not the uncertainty that you're in. You are the person that you decide to be in these moments, which is, well, how do you step up and lead in these challenging times in your organization as a person, as a dad, as a mum, as a partner? And for me personally, Happiness Co is dramatically impacted by the coronavirus. We lost 80% of our revenue on the Monday. And we do live events, training, conferences all around Australia, and we lost 80% of our revenue. We've got employees, I've got livelihoods, I've got families, I've got my own family. And I share this with you because you can easily fall back into fear or you can work on being resilient and resourceful. And quite often in life, if you think about people, think about your own friends and your own family. Quite often we ask ourselves the wrong questions or we make disempowering statements. And what I mean by the wrong questions would be, or something like this, Why does things like this always happen to me? That's a bad question. I don't think I'm going to get through this is a bad statement, because these statements and these questions don't leave you to feeling that I am empowered to overcome it. And you can be scared. I tell this to people all the time. You can be scared and still be brave. You can be concerned and worried and still be courageous. And that comes from your behaviors and your actions, which comes by your emotions. So think emotions being fuel. But what determines emotion is meaning, as I mentioned before. The meanings that you apply to the things that are happening in your life are incredibly important. If you see challenge as opportunity, then that's what you create. The only things that will grow in your life are the things that you give your time and attention to. So you put your time and attention to being resourceful. That's what you'll become. And when I first decided, a great example of being resourceful is when I first decided to become a professional speaker. And when I say professional speaker, it's a bit of tongue in cheek because I wasn't really professional. But when I was 25 years old, I decided I wanted to start speaking and I guess using my own story to help other people. But the thing about trying to do something that you want to do doesn't always work out the way you thought it would in your head. So I run 1 live event, no one rocked up. I run 2 live events, no one rocked up. I run 5 live events and no one rocked up. I ended up running 11 live events, putting on tea and coffee and trying to advertise it, and no one showed up. And I share this with you because it's very daunting and challenging and, creates a little bit of despair when you're trying to do something in your life and no one seems to support it. But I wasn't being resourceful enough. I wasn't trying to find out why people weren't coming. I wasn't seeing it was the wrong time. Was I, presenting the right subjects? Was it for too long or was it for too short? And then when you start to be resourceful, you start to ask yourself better questions. And one of the most powerful questions that you can ask yourself in your life is, who do I need to become? Who do I need to become to overcome this challenge in my relationship? Who do I need to become to overcome this challenge in my businesses? Who do I need to become to overcome these challenges in my health? And when you ask yourself that question, you tap into what we call options. And if there's one thing that you remember from this presentation today, please remember this. You're only as free as the options that you have. I repeat it. You're only as free as the options that you have available to you. Or who creates options? Well, the person that's most resourceful creates the options. And what I mean by that is, I've got a bunch of different businesses, and I share this with you because they're all being affected. I've got a juice company in the city. I've got a clothing company. I've got a Mind Body Lounge, which is a wellness facility with cryotherapy, with saunas, with meditation pods that's been affected. We've got Happiness Co. We've got a brand new program, which is for female empowerment. These are just some of the brands that I've been able and been fortunate enough to build over the last 5 to 6 years of my life. And some of them have had extreme amounts of success, and some of them have struggled. But they've all struggled right now. They are all struggling right now at some point in their livelihood. And the reason I share that again with you is because, well, how do you make sure that your company, your brand, your mission, your movement, but most importantly, you look after your own mental health? It is how you manage your meanings. It is how you manage your emotions. How you feel, remember, determines how you think, and how you think determines how you behave. So I always tell this to people, think about 5 choices a day. Just 5. Out of the 30,000 decisions that you make every day of your life, start working on 5 choices to be better tomorrow than you were today. I repeat it, to be better tomorrow than you were today. There's one thing that we all can agree on, that we can always be better in something in our lives, better in our relationships, better in our career, better in our health, better towards the person that we want to be. So if you think about 5 decisions that you can start making towards that person, you start to control what we call being resourceful. It might be drinking more water. It might be having more intimate conversations with your partner. It might be spending more time with your kids. It might be spending more time working on your career. But whatever it is, it needs to be important to the meanings that you create. And I've been taking we work with a lot of big corporates in Australia, and we've been doing a lot of these web training across Australia and helping people through this. But these are the things that create will. So will is that determination to overcome. You know, that will to feel that you can overcome your challenges. And you've survived 1,000% of your worst moments today because you're still here, right? But there's something that will help you with will and something that will help you with determination, which is asking yourself these 4 questions. And before I open up to some Q&A, I'd love to get your thoughts on the things that we've discussed today and maybe some challenges that you're seeing, you know, pop up in your own life. But number 1, you have to determine the problem. And there are 2 types of problems in this world. There's only 2. There are internal problems and there are external problems. So I'm going to unmute Rob again because he was such a good guinea pig before. Rob, how are you, buddy?
Yeah, okay, mate. Yeah, all good.
Mate, can you give me an example of what we would call some external problems? What do you think an external problem looks like to a person?
Well, to me personally, it's something that I can't control. So it's out of my control. So that's an external problem. Not my job. I can't control it, and that's the end of it, sort of thing. And that's how I cope with it. You know, there's things in my control, there's things out of my control. If it's in my control, hey, I'll deal with it and I'll give it a crack. It's out of my control, it's out of my control, and stop worrying about it. And that's the end of it.
So true. One of the biggest things around mindfulness is to work on the things that you can control. But Rob's 100% right. Well, things that are external are things like money, relationships, career, job status. These things are what we call external problems. They are external facing. Everyone has money problems at times. Everyone has relationship problems at times. But the truth about problems is this: your problems never go away. You get better at dealing with them. Your problems never go away. You get better at dealing with them, which is being resourceful. Internal problems are much more damaging. Think about a physical injury versus an emotional one. I repeat it. Think about a physical injury versus an emotional one. People are very good at identifying a physical injury because it's very obvious. My ankle's sore. It's playing up. I'm going to go to the doctor, the physio. I'm going to get some rehab. I'm going to rest it so I can get my ankle back to being at its best so I can go back to living my life. But the problem with internal problems and internal injuries, they aren't as obvious, but they are so very present in our life every day. Rejection, worry, fear, doubt, uncertainty, despair, frustration, boredom. These are what we call emotional injuries because people are very good at pushing the way that they feel away. Because if something makes us feel uncomfortable, then we don't like to deal with it. So one of the biggest things that pops up is, why don't people like conflict? Conflict is one of the things that people run from every day of their lives. Conflict with their relationships, in their workplaces, because conflicts make us feel uncomfortable. Some people like conflict, but the average person doesn't like conflict because it makes us feel uncomfortable. The same thing with our emotions. When we feel uncomfortable, we avoid the conflict or the conversation that we may have with ourselves, which is, are we behaving the way that we want to behave? Are we doing the things that we want to do? Are we being the person that we want to be? And these things quite often bring up discomfort in ourselves, and then we try to avoid and distract from them. And every single person goes through these challenges in their life. But as I said, if you can work on these 5 things. So number 1, determining the problem. What is the problem? Number 2, determine the worst thing that could happen. Determine the worst thing. So say, for example, the problem is Happiness Co. not making as much money as it was, and we have to pay our staff. So then you determine the worst thing that could happen in that scenario. Well, the worst thing that can happen is that we have to let go of all our employees. And maybe the worst thing that happens is Happiness Co. doesn't recover from the coronavirus and we go into administration. That may be the worst thing that happens. The third is accept that being the challenge. So accept that that's the worst thing that could happen. And then number 4, start making choices from the worst thing that could possibly happen. So if I start making choices right now, working from, well, how can I make sure that doesn't happen? It makes me empowered, but it also helps me anticipate. Good leaders, good people anticipate and they act. Anticipation is knowing the landscape, creating yourself options and acting accordingly. And it doesn't mean that you're always going to be perfect in your choices. It doesn't mean that you're always going to get it right. But what it does mean is that you're brave enough to take the step forward. You're brave enough to work through the challenges. You're brave enough to know that your choices that you make determine the outcomes that you receive. So if you were to go out tonight, for instance, and have too many glasses of wine, well, the choices that you make tonight would be the result that you have tomorrow, which is most likely a hangover. If the choices that you made today were better for yourself, your health, your relationships, your career, then quite often what you find is that outcomes that you start to receive tomorrow will be better for you. All the outcomes that you're trying to achieve and receive in your life. So I guess I would like to open up to a bit of Q&A about some of the things I talked about. If you have any questions about uncertainty, about fear, about doubt, about your family, I would love to hear from you, because we've now worked with about 80,000 people in 10 countries about these challenges, and I'm very grateful to be here with you today. But I'd love to see if there's anything that you may be struggling with or feeling some discomfort around that maybe I can give you some clarity on.
Feel free to put your hand up.
Hello, how are you? I've unmuted you. I think, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Hi. My name's Sarah. I used to be quite an elite athlete. I played soccer for Australia, and my problem is now I've got quite a bad back injury last year. I've got a desk job. I retired from playing about 10 years ago, and I've put on a bit of weight over the last couple of years, and I'm finding it really hard to get myself motivated. I've got an exercise program because I've got it all through workers' comp, and I've got an exercise physiologist. I've got a mini gym at home out in the shed, and I just can't find that motivation to get myself out there. You know, I used to train every day and, you know, play, you know, regularly, and now I'm just finding it really hard to, you know, I'm pushing 50, and yeah, I don't want to be overweight for the rest of my life, but I'm just finding it really hard to get out there.
Firstly, I really appreciate you sharing that and being vulnerable with the group and about your weight, about your life, about your challenges. And one of the things that motivation, as you know, comes and goes. Motivation is like an emotion. It will come in waves at times, and it will come in droughts. And it's like, why don't I feel motivated to get out of bed in the morning and exercise? Why don't I feel motivated to put that time and effort into my job? But if I could give you some advice about motivation, it's this. If you could write this down, it's pretty powerful. Reasons over results. Reasons over results. So results are logical and reasons are emotional. Every single person on the planet makes decisions emotionally and justifies logically. Like, that is what makes us human. That's what makes us universal. That we feel things emotionally and then we justify logically. So your logic would be, I don't want to be this way. Your logic would be that I used to be this person. Logic is, I have a bad back. These are logical things in our mind, right? 100%. But if you can tap into reasons that will drive you, that's emotional. So reasons may be, I don't want to feel unworthy. I don't want to feel unhappy. I don't want to feel tired. I don't want to feel doubtful. If you can tap into emotional reasons to fuel your life, because momentum. So we know this by human behavior. So it was called momentum thinking. So every 17 seconds, you attach a thought to a thought. So a thought attached to another thought, depending what you're thinking about. And I'm sure you've had this before, Sarah. Have you ever had a problem before that started quite small and you kept thinking about it? By the end of the day, it was bigger than Ben-Hur? Yeah, I'm sure you have. We've all had that before because it's called momentum thinking. And momentum's very hard to stop, regardless if it's good or bad. So what you need to do is really start working on these reasons that drive you, because reasons are emotional and emotion's power. So you think about creating state. One of the great things to do is to close your eyes, Sarah, and start to focus on how you want to feel, not how you want to look, how you want to, what kind of energy, how do you want to see yourself in the mirror emotionally, not physically, because physically we always fall short. This is why so many people go to the gym and after 3 months they stop. Because external motivators are only so good. How you look at yourself in the mirror is a big motivator, but how you feel about yourself is more important. And I'll share this quick story before I go to the next question. Because I once worked with a lady that told me she wanted to lose 20 kilos. And I said, why do you want to lose 20 kilos? She said, because I want to fit into this dress to go to this wedding. And straight away when someone tells me that, I had red flags in my brain. But it's not my job to tell people not to lose 20 kilos. And guess what? She actually lost 20 kilos and she looked incredible. And she fit into this dress to go to this wedding. In that moment, she felt $1 million. She felt so proud, so achieved, and so beautiful because she achieved what she said she was set out to do. 3 months later, what do you reckon happened to her, Sarah?
Weight came back on. She lost her motivation.
Lost the motivation. And do you know what? Her weight didn't actually come back on, but that's quite common. But what actually happened is the negative self-talk started to happen. Mm-hmm. The unworthiness came back. And I mean this with respect to everyone on the call. This is what exactly the word I said to her. I said, if you're ugly on the I don't remember what I said then. If you're ugly on the inside, you'll always be ugly on the outside. And what I mean by that is, I don't determine what ugly is or what beautiful is. But if you don't like the person that you are and you don't have strong emotional reasons to make choices, then you'll always fall short getting caught up in logic. I'm not saying that's particularly you, but I'm saying if you can work on the emotional reasons always overcome results. Did that help at all?
It most certainly did, thank you. And yeah, I'm a really happy-go-lucky person, and but this is getting me down, not in a massive big way, but I sort of think, I need to start working on this. So yeah, no, that's good. I like the tapping into all that emotional stuff, and that is what I'll be working on over the next few weeks, and that'll give me something to.
And don't forget to close your eyes and visualize. Like the highest form of intelligence is creativity. And what I mean by that, most people don't know that closing your eyes and actually motivating your own reasons for something are very powerful. You can tap into your own pleasure and your own pain. There's only 2 reasons on the planet, guys, that people change: pain or pleasure. Enough pain and I have to change, or enough pleasure and I want it. And most people wait till they experience enough pain to change. But we don't have to endure such pain to want to change our life. We just have to work on the emotional reasons that we want to. And just, Sarah, a great example again is Happiness Co financially. That would be a result. Happiness Co is not getting the same result that it was before. But the reason why I haven't been unmotivated to run the company is because I never started Happiness Co for money. So my reason to help people is still there. My reason to be here with you all right now is still there. My reason to want to get up in the morning and support other people is still there, regardless of the result that we're not getting financially. So it's just a great way to look at your wins and losses along the way, everybody. So thanks, Sarah, for being so vulnerable and open. Anyone else have a question?
I believe Roger's iPad has grumpy old man syndrome, but he's he's actually saying, it's affecting his work relationships. How does he fix that? Driven by frustration, etc. So how does he fix that?
Do we mean being at home?
Well, he's saying that, he's got this grumpy old man syndrome. It's affecting work relationships, and he tends to not have any filter at times.
Yeah.
And that's how he sees it. But he's just driven by frustration. So he's just asking, how does he fix that?
Yeah. So a great one around people, like human behavior, how we behave. So how we behave comes from a bunch of factors. We call it a blueprint, which is a blueprint comes from your beliefs, your outlooks, your rules, your identity, and your upbringing. So these are your filters ultimately, as Rob just alluded to. I don't have a filter. Our filters are how we see the world. So we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So really important distinction. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. I may see the world as a really kind, loving, amazing place, and you might see it as a horrible place, because our filters matter. Our meanings and our beliefs matter. Beliefs are what we fundamentally believe to be true. So some people believe in God and Jesus and heaven and hell, and some people believe in spirituality. Some people believe in lots of different things along the way. But I guess in terms of how you treat people, I think that it comes down to living the way you want to be remembered, and then what is a superpower. And when I say a superpower, I believe a superpower is empathy and compassion. And empathy and compassion means, well, before I react to someone, as you would call grumpy man syndrome, before I react as being grumpy and being, snappy, well, how, if I put empathy before that, would I respond? And empathy is beautiful if you use it properly. Well, how would you like someone to speak to your son or daughter? And Rob, do you actually, that's a good example, because I think you're the one that made the point. Do you have kids?
I do, yeah. I've got 3 of them. Only one here, another one in Germany now, and another one over in Adelaide. So they're running their life. Nothing I can do about that. Good luck to them.
Good luck to them. And the reason I bring that up is because we did a road rage campaign in Melbourne about 2 years ago, and I was the spokesperson for the emotional side of road rage. And the road rage campaign was all about when someone gets out the car and starts banging on the window on this poor, elderly lady driving, it says, that's someone's grandma too. That's someone's mum too. That's someone's daughter too. So one of the easiest ways I believe, to apply empathy to someone is, how would I like someone to treat my son or my daughter, or to treat me? And it does take time to train that. It does take time to work on that filter. But I guarantee you, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress. And when we feel good about our lives, we take better action. When we feel good about ourselves, we're better communicators. We're better with our resilience. We're better with our self-esteem. We're better with treating other people better. And at times, our attitude reflects our altitude. So I'm not saying this is about Rob at all. I'm just saying that our attitude towards life determines our attitude towards how we treat people and what kind of outcomes we get when we're dealing with people. So if you have a poor attitude towards life, you're probably going to have poor outcomes. And there's a great saying, I don't know who said it, said, a negative mind will never give you a positive life. And there's one thing that I've learned in this life that is the most powerful thing of all, is this. If you can change the way you look at something, what you look at changes. I repeat it for everyone on the call. If you change the way you look at something or someone, what you look at changes. And for me, I had to change the way I saw what happened to my dad to change my life. I had to change the way I saw myself to change my life. I had to change the person I was trying to become to change my life, because I quite often thought of myself as a monster. I didn't like the young man I was because of what I said to my dad. And because of that, I caused such suffering in my life. And also, I treated other people really poorly. Because I was hurting, I was projecting and transferring, and it's a part of what we know, positive psychology. We are very good at transferring, and we're very good at projecting onto other people our own problems. I was very good at that. And then awareness precedes change. So for everyone on the call, remember that. Awareness always precedes change. You can't change something that you're not aware of. So the good thing is, Rob, that sometimes you are aware that you have grumpy man syndrome, then work on it.
Oh, it wasn't me. It was Roger with grumpy man syndrome. I've got it too, but I call it honest man syndrome.
But it was Roger. Cypri's actually given us how would you handle the psychopaths and sociopaths in the workplace? Wow.
Well, it's a thing that's called cause and effect. Sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to apply it was you. I thought it was you, but it's not you, so that's good.
No, it is me. It is me, but I accept it.
No, accept it. And there's nothing wrong with being, there's nothing wrong with being honest.
Yeah.
There's a great saying, and please write this down because it will change your life in all conflicts. Hard conversations, easy life. Easy conversations, hard life. It will change your conflicts with your partner, with your friends, with your family, and with your workplace. It doesn't mean you can be an arsehole, by the way. It just means that you can be honest, which is a lot of people don't actually say what they're thinking. So with my partner, I'm so very lucky that I love her so very much. But if I'm not telling her how I'm actually feeling because I'm worried that she's going to get upset at me, then, well, she would never really know how I'm feeling. So you have to be willing to have the hard conversations, even if it's going to upset the other person. even if it's going to cause some tension, because conflict in sporting teams and in workplaces actually creates growth, how you treat each other. And the other one was, how do you deal with the psychopaths in the workplace? Well, you probably want to get rid of them if you could, but if you do have some, what we call is cause and effect. Cause and effect, which is individual responsibility, is this. Something happens to affect you, but you create cause. So cause and effect. No one can affect you to feel a certain way. Only you can cause yourself to feel that way. So Rob can't make me angry. Who makes me angry? The meanings I apply to what Rob has done. So Roger can't make me angry. Sarah can't make me feel unworthy. Only I can apply the meaning that makes me feel unworthy. So when you are dealing with people that are putting you down or making you feel less than, I always say distance yourself as best you can. But if you have to deal with them, remember, they only have as much power as the power you give them. They only have as much power as the power that you give them. So if someone calls me a loser, well, if I buy into feeling that I'm a loser, only that insult comes harming to me as a person. But I understand that's very difficult, but there's what we call association and dissociation. If you can dissociate yourself from people's comments and the things that people say that make you feel a certain particular way, then you become very powerful to not kind of get bought into what I call the quicksand of meaning and the quicksand of, because every single person on the planet has this. We have issues and challenges at times with our self-worth and our self-acceptance and all that kind of stuff that alludes to that.
Excuse me, Julian.
Hello.
Catherine here. Hi. That's an interesting comment about dealing with sociopaths and psychopaths in the workplace. And of course, you know, we're all intelligent adults and the cause and effect thing is real. However, sometimes you do find yourself being quite deeply affected by someone who is quite mentally unstable, you know, which is a psychopath or a sociopath. And just to share very briefly my experience, I was in a situation working with a person who was extremely in those areas. And I came to the point where I couldn't do my job properly because everything was all over the shop. And I then came to a point where I thought, really, do I want to live my life like this in this situation in an ongoing way? And I actually made a decision to get out. I thought, actually, this is my life and I want my life to be a good life. So I'm making a choice to remove myself from this situation so that I can have a pleasant time. And it worked.
It's amazing what you do when you empower yourself to act, right? And I love that, and I love the example because it's an acronym. We call it ACT. It's called Action Conditioning Therapy. So, Catherine, if I said therapy to you, what's the meaning that you would apply to therapy? And quite often people apply the wrong meaning to therapy. They think I'm going to go see a shrink. But when I say therapy, what do you mean? What do you think it means?
Well, I think it means looking at a situation, considering the options and then making a decision that works for me.
100%. That's a great example of therapy. You think about physiotherapy, you think about therapy, it actually is healing. So action, conditioning, healing. That's what you're trying to do. Take action to condition your life to heal. So think about it. If you were to do push-ups every single day, you become stronger, you'd probably get a better body, you'd be able to do more push-ups. You condition yourself to do more. The same thing with emotion. Take action to condition yourself to be able to heal the things in your life that are causing you frustration, pain, worry, and sometimes it's removing yourself from the situation. But if there's one tool that is the most powerful tool with dealing with conflict or people in your life, it's this. So please write these 3 questions down, and I'll make sure I send them through too because they are long. Number 1 is, what do I need to learn and understand more about the story or the situation? So what do you need to learn and understand more about the situation at hand, like the workplace or your relationship, the actual situation? So the information that goes into that scenario. Number 2 is, what do I need to learn and understand more about the other person's story? Because every single person has a reason for why they do something. You may think that people just wake up in the morning and are assholes just because they want to be. Well, no one wakes up in the morning and just wants to be an asshole. I'm talking about the 1% of people. Maybe the 1% of people that wake up in the morning want to cause other people harm and want to actually do bad things to other people. The 1%. The other people, please understand this. There are no bad people. There is just bad behavior. People act poorly. And one of the greatest things I've learned about now working with so many people is this: hurt people hurt people. Hurt people that are hurting in their lives. Someone has hurt them along the way, their dad, their mum, their brother. Someone along the line or something along the way has caused that individual immense amounts of pain. And because of that, at some point in their life, they've used that to now inflict pain on other people. So what do I need to know and understand about the other person's story? And number 3, what do I need to learn and understand more about my own? Because maybe, as Rob said, sometimes it's just being truthful. Maybe you're too sensitive. Sometimes we're too sensitive because we're trying to seek validation from our parents, or we were trying to seek validation because we believed that we weren't good enough when we were young. Like, whatever. There's so many reasons and meanings that go into the things that we do. But if you start asking yourself, I wonder why this is affecting me a certain way. And I'll share a quick story before one more question. I remember my stepson.
What if you don't want the bastard to win? What if you don't want the psychopath or the sociopath to win, and so you choose to stick it out? And sometimes we're more resilient to stick it out than at other times. But what if that's your choice?
If I always win, you should know that by now.
Well, I guess it's always about the meaning, mate, and determining what you believe winning is. So remember, meaning is everything. So winning doesn't mean you always come first. So in Catherine's example, winning was leaving. Winning is not always coming first, and I've learned that in my own life. Winning isn't always about being on the podium. Winning is about doing what's best for you, and that's sometimes determining what is worth fighting for. And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up. Like, you know how you see people on social media like tearing other people down and having cracks at people? I just look at that. I just have no time in my life to feel like I want to be part of these conversations, because it actually doesn't benefit me whatsoever. So you've got to work out what's worth fighting for. And when you work out what's worth fighting for and you ask yourself, what does this mean to me? You quite often find the reason. So a quick example is, I've got a stepson. My partner and her ex-husband don't get along amazingly well. Like, as you'd imagine, it's not always sunshine and rainbows when there's a divorce. And that divorce sometimes caused conflict for my partner and her stepson. Not so much me, but my partner's ex-husband doesn't like me at all. He calls me a preacher. That's what he calls me. And he's never met me. He's never spent any time with me, but he calls me a preacher. So my stepson comes home at times and he calls me a preacher. He goes, "Oh, Dad calls you a preacher." And I just laugh. And I say, "I am a preacher. Be happy." But the reason I share this with you is when he went back to school in term 1, all the way back at the start of 2020, it was his first day of year 1, and I really wanted to go. He goes, "Are you going to come to year 1 with me? I want you to drop me off." And I knew that his dad was going. I knew my partner was going. And I knew that it would just cause conflict with his dad, me being there. So I thought, you know what, I'm not going to go. But I lied. I lied to my stepson and said, "Unfortunately, I can't go. I've got to be at work." But I didn't have to be at work, but I lied to him. But then I felt really bad about lying to him, because he didn't deserve me lying to him, because it had nothing to do with him. But the reason I share this with you is because I started to get really frustrated at myself, but then I started getting frustrated at my partner. And the reason I got frustrated at my partner is because she didn't ask me if I wanted to go to school and see him for his first day. So she didn't say anything at all. But then what I realized was, well, what do I need to know and understand more about the situation? What do I need to understand and learn more about her story? And what do I need to learn and understand more about mine? And I realized that the reason why I was upset is because I was feeling a little left out and a little unworthy that they were all going to school with my stepson and I wasn't. Does that make sense? So what you start to recognize is when you start to have conversations with yourself about, I wonder why this is making me feel a certain way, you quite often find some really powerful insights. Any other questions or thoughts or shares?
I think Misha had a comment that she had. She's quite happy. If you're happy to speak about it, Misha, it's up to you. We can unmute you. But she made a comment that she'd worked hard all her life, saved and accumulated assets. And now, as she's getting older, she's got essentially 3 goals and she would like to achieve them. But she just feels unworthy. So I'm hoping, oh, she has no microphone. So I'm hoping that your answer that you said before about being undeserving, unworthy, may have hopefully answered that question for Misha. Because as it wasn't really a question, it was more of a comment, but I think she just wanted to have that she was after. Yeah.
A great share, and unworthiness is what I call. Do you reckon people talk about coronavirus being this pandemic, and I understand it's been challenging. Do you want to know what the real pandemic is? Unworthiness. That's the real illness in people, because that's the thing that stops us being brave, stopped us going after what we want, stops us being the person that we want to be. So if we can work on the unworthiness, which is how we feel about ourselves, our self-confidence, our self-worth, and then people always ask me, well, Jules, how do you build self-worth then? Self-esteem and self-worth are critical in anyone that achieves anything in their life and maintains it. Because just achieving something is not enough. You have to learn how to maintain it. So achieving and maintaining is the goal of life. So to achieve happiness for 1 week is great, but to achieve happiness for your life would be incredible. So how do you do that? So this would be answers to Misha's question ultimately. Number 1 is commitment. You have to be ridiculously committed to building it. And number 2, you have to be courageous, because it's going to be uncomfortable. And there's a beautiful saying that says, change, if it doesn't challenge you, it will never change you. And change is hard at the start, messy in the middle, and beautiful at the end. I repeat it. Change is hard. You've all tried to change before. Change is so very difficult. It is messy in the middle because it's kind of like you're all out of sorts and you're still trying to work it all out. And then at the end, you get to the finish line or on the journey, you're like, wow, you know what? I did that myself. I did that for me. And I did it all the right ways, because I believe doing the right thing is always the right thing. There's always a lot of shortcuts in your life that you can take, but how you do anything is how you do everything. I mean this, it's true. If you take shortcuts in your job, you'll take shortcuts in your relationship. You take shortcuts in your relationship, you'll take shortcuts in your life. How you do anything is how you do everything. So make sure you put commitment in, because commitment will see you through when you don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Because if you think commitment, well, no one wants to get out of bed at 4:30 in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning and go to the gym when it's freezing cold. But commitment will make sure you do. Commitment to going out on date night with your partner. Maybe sometimes you're so tired and you've had a terrible day at work and you don't feel like taking your partner out for date night. But commitment allows us to still perform, Misha, and obtain goals even when we don't feel like it, when we feel unworthy. So commitment is the first step in that.
Okay.
Hey, Julian, can I just ask a question? And it comes, I guess, partially from my own experience, is, you know, there's that saying of, if you're doing something, have a good team around you. So, you know, often I think what we do, and I know for myself, I try to do everything by myself, for whatever my project is. And sometimes I find where I get stuck is a spot where I can actually get someone else or ask someone else to help me. You know, it's having a team around you is also important, because we're social beings.
Okay.
So, you know, I'm interested in your comment on that. You know, I'm hearing everything you say. It makes sense. there's some great inspirational stuff there, but I wonder what your view is about that, about having a team around you, getting access to people who can help you get over your hurdles or whatever.
Yeah, great question. And
Thanks, Julie. You've got 1 minute.
my answer would be rapport. So, and what I'd say today is anything is possible in the power of rapport, but what rapport needs is trust. So trust is the critical ingredient to rapport. Rapport means you can overcome anything together. So only when you have trust can you have rapport. And rapport doesn't mean you always get along, and rapport doesn't mean it's always smooth sailing, but trust builds rapport, builds connection, and then anything is possible in the power of rapport. So if you are struggling to reach out to people and get them to support you, start working on the mindset of trusting yourself and others, and then building more rapport, and then you'll feel more comfortable sharing these challenges with them. That was 30 seconds.
That was 30 seconds. Well done, Julian. I was just going to say, yes, this is being recorded, so everyone will receive this, the link in a couple of days, and it will go out to everybody. Okay, so, thank you, Julian. Other than that,